Hey there gamers, welcome back to the Board Game Co channel, and today we have a preview of Infinity Rogue Space Dungeon. Hey there gamers, it's Professor Meg here, and welcome back to the Board Game Co channel. Today we have a preview of Infinity Rogue Space Dungeon by Roguelike. Now this is a sponsored preview. This is also a demo copy in front of me, so all rules, components, things like that are subject to change, and you can check out the game file link down below because this is an active campaign. Now, not only that, but this is part of the Microrama series, so if you check out the link down below, not only will you find this game, but in the current campaign there are 3 other games which we'll also have videos on for the channel, but they're all going to be solo games that provide quite a puzzle for players, where they're all going to be pretty different. We're going to dive into Infinity Rogue Space Dungeon today, where you're going to be using a push your luck system to go through different levels of a space dungeon as an Infinity Rogue trying to escape. So you are going through these different levels and you're trying to find a key card, but you're also trying to find different things that will upgrade your deck along the way and try to survive the different traps as well as monsters that you're going to encounter. But you also have a boss at the end of each level for you to beat. So there are 3 levels every time you sit down and play, but you have different level cards as well. So there's a ton of replayability with both how you set up the game as well as just where all of these different cards land and how you're going to interact with them. So as you can see here, these are our blueprints, and this is how we have the current configuration set up of all of the different map cards. Now, this is also showing us what level of the space dungeon we're currently on, and this card is really going to rule a lot of the cards that we're interacting with. So I'll get into that much later, but just know that it also tells you what level you're currently at. Then once you proceed to level 2 after fighting the boss over here, you'll flip this over so that the 2 is showing, and then once you proceed to level 3, you'll flip it over this way to show level 3. So you can see where your thresholds will change. And again, I'm going to get into what all of that means in a moment, but you can see how you're progressing level over level with these different configurations. So your maps are going to change all the time, where you're able to spin them around as well and use the other sides. But you're going to use these different map layouts to try to get your Infinity Rogue over here from this end to this end over to the boss to fight them. And to do so, you are going to upgrade the cards in your deck. This is going to be the deck for the bots that you are fighting against, and this is going to be all of your stats over here. So this is going to be a lot of the resources that you gain throughout the game, but it's also going to track things for you like your health and your experience points, which are both going to come in handy, where your health, as you can imagine, you don't want to hit 0, otherwise you'll lose the game. And your experience points, every time you hit 10, you actually get to increase your threshold for your capacity for these resources, so that can be very cool. But your other resources, I'll get into why they're important when I dive more into the general gameplay. Now, regardless of what you're encountering, most of these different rooms are going to have you use a test to push your luck. So players are going to have a starting deck, and as you can see, they all have this power level at the top. So that's going to be really important. After this, I'm just going to have us dive into the game and you'll see what a few turns will look like. But just know that this power level in your starting deck, you're going to be very familiar with this. And something that's really interesting is that every time you need to shuffle and cycle through this, you do have to pay a resource. But when you do that, you're able to turn your cards around. So you're able to change the orientation and customize your deck based on what the different levels look like, because you're going to want to have higher and higher power levels. So we'll get into what that means in a moment, but just know that when you are using this push your luck system, this power level when you're flipping your cards over is what you're going to be looking at. Now, the first turn on any level, players are going to have to interact with the spot that they're on, but then after that, they're normally going to be able to move and then interact with different room cards. So I'm going to go over this before and how you interact with a particular room before I go over how you'll start covering the map. So as I said, your level 1 card and whatever level you're going to be at is going to be extremely important. So we do have an enemy uncovered here. We're going to have to fight them. So we're going to place this over here. And that's going to tell us a few different things. So the current level that we're at, we do not want to exceed power level of 6. If we exceed that, we're going to bust and not be able to contribute our power to that particular test. So that's going to be true, as you can see, for anything that's level 1, whether we're in a trap room or fighting someone like this. So You can also see that they have this the diamond signal here. So you're going to put this over here at the matching symbol, and that's how much health they have. So this guy has 8 health, and we're going to be fighting off against him. So with that 8 health, we're going to need to probably do multiple waves of damage. So I'm going to show you what that will look like. So simultaneously, you're going to draw both for yourself as well as the bots, but you can choose to stop if you want to. So obviously, we'll draw our first card and flip these over, and there is an ability, and that's going to apply to the top card that you have available. So if we chose to stop right now, we would have 2 power, but +1 damage. Now they have 2 power, and this white box here shows that the enemy wants to get to at least 4 power, and then they'll choose to stop, which is called standing. So for them, they are going to choose to keep going, and I think we should too. So we'll flip another card for us, and then we'll flip a card for them. So they have now hit that 4 health, which means that they're going to be able to heal 2 health if they were the one to win this. So we are going to hopefully be able to beat them. We're currently at 3, so we'll draw our next card and see what happens. Now, we're currently at 4 and they're at 4, but in the case of a tie, whoever has the most cards contributed is actually going to win. Now, when you do so, you're going to do 2 damage plus whatever your top card was. If our top card was a +1 damage, unfortunately it's not, but that may be better for us, because if we were to draw another 1, that would only do 1 damage to them, because when you do have a higher power value than the opponent, they're going to do damage based on the difference. So for example, if we were able to get to 6 power, which again is our threshold, we would still be able to do 2 damage, which is the same as stopping now. So we might as well stop. We will be able to add a health for ourselves, which is great. And then this is going to go to our discard pile, as well as this for the enemy. Now it'll go on to a new round of combat where you're going to continue fighting until you take this guy out. So we'll flip over new cards both for ourselves as well as the bot. And here they have only 1 power, so they're definitely going to continue drawing. I think that we should as well. So we will draw for ourselves, and we will draw for this. Now this is really interesting, whereas you can see we are at 5 power, but the top ability for this is +1 power. So we're going to choose to stand, which is stopping, but they are going to continue to keep going because they're currently only at 3 and they want to get to 4. So they may even potentially bust. Unfortunately, they don't. So they are at 6 as well. And in this case, they actually have more cards contributed than us. So they're going to be able to win in this particular round. So again, in the case of a tie, you're going to do 2 damage. And sadly, we're not preventing anything. So they're going to do 2 damage to us. And then it would go on to the next round of combat. Now for the next round, we will draw for each of us. And here we have an item that is 4 power and would do +3 damage, unfortunately, if it was at the top. So our best bet would be able to stop and hope that they bust, which is possible, but unfortunately, I think it's our best bet to continue drawing, and they definitely will because they haven't reached that 4 threshold. So we are going to draw, and they are going to draw as well. Now we are at 6. And they are at the 4. They are going to stop there because 4 is their threshold, where we would do 2 damage, which is the difference, but they're also going to block 2 damage, meaning that we won't do any damage at all. So you can see where the enemies are really tough, where depending on what they draw as well as what you draw, before you're able to upgrade your deck with different loot items, it can be really tricky to try to beat them. So let's go on to another round of combat to hopefully do a little bit of damage to them. So we will draw a card for us. This is a 1, giving us +1 power. And for them, we're going to draw a 3. This would have us discard 1, but luckily they're going to keep drawing. Now, we want to keep drawing, but we aren't able to because we don't have a deck. So we're going to take our discard pile here, pay a power cell, and be able to shuffle this and keep drawing from here. So we are able to flip some of these over if we want to do a little bit more damage. So maybe this one will flip over to be a little bit stronger, and maybe this one as well will flip over to give us extra health. Now, those are going to be really dangerous if we happen to draw them, but they're also going to be really helpful in certain situations where we draw them first. So we'll shuffle those in like that and then draw for ourselves as well as the bots. And here you can see that they busted. So they have an 8 power. However, the top ability for this is Chrono Crystal. So if they bust when this is on top, they'll be able to put this back on top and stop that current round. So they will only have 3 power. This is a great chance for us to do more damage. So we will be able to draw as well. Now here is a similar situation where we have 4, 5, 6, 7, so we would bust, but we do have a Chrono Crystal, so we're able to pay that and put this on top, and we are actually doing, we're tied, but we're doing more cards in play than they have, so we're going to be able to do 2 damage to them. So they aren't stopping anything, and this is going to gain us a Chrono Crystal, which is great. So we'll do 2 damage to them, and now that we know what's currently on top, I'll have us go through one more round of combat. So we'll flip this over, and then flip this one over, and we are at 4, they're at 5. Oh, we were doing the extra damage, but we're going to have to draw another card. So we're currently at 5, but we have more cards than them, so this is another instance where we would be able to do 2 damage, and they would lose this 5 card, which is really great for us. Now, for the sake of the tutorial, I am going to have us skip ahead now and beat him, because you'll notice that he is actually a 3 skull level monster, so they are pretty tough to beat, so it makes sense that this was taking us a little bit to do so, but as you saw, we were kind of handling ourselves, especially this being early in the level. We have a ton of health, so we're pretty okay, but a lot of the tests in the game are going to look like that. Now, when you're fighting in combat, you do have the bot deck that you are fighting against, but when you're doing things like testing against different traps, you're going to do a similar system where you are flipping over your different power cards, so I'll show you what that looks like now. Now, when we beat this Berserkatron Brute, we're going to gain all of the rewards that are listed on this side. So we're going to be able to gain 2 credits, 2 experience points, as well as a loot card. So that's going to be these cards over here. And because they are a 3 difficulty with the 3 skulls at the top, we're going to be able to draw 3 different cards and add 1 to our discard pile. So these are all pretty great, but again, as I noted with your regular cards, you are able to flip them over. So you are able to use them for either side, depending on what you want to do. Now this plus 5 damage or plus 3 damage does sound really good to me. Otherwise, we could get additional health or we could get additional blocks, but I'm going to have us choose to take the additional damage. So this is going to get added to our discard pile. This is going to get shuffled up, and then we're going to have completed this room. So once that happens, players are going to be able to move on to going through the subsequent rooms. And when you do so, you're able to scout ahead and look at a particular room, and then if you choose not to go in it, you must go to another adjacent room. So what that means is if we chose to look at this card here and see what it is, here it's a cyber scuttler, so they're actually not that hard to fight, so we may choose to go over here, go through a round of combat. If we win, that would have gained us a credit as well as an experience point, but you can see here, this one actually does not give you any loot cards, and then we would be in this area here. Now, you are never able to go back to cards you've previously been at, so we won't be able to go back to here. Now, obviously, you wouldn't want to fight other enemies, but there are going to be other rooms that give you benefits, and we're going to try to find some of those. So, on a subsequent turn, we may choose to flip this card over here, take a look, and say, I do not want to go there, so I'm going to choose to go to this card here. Now, you don't have a choice when you go to that final card. Great, it's another enemy, so we would move over here and then fight them. So now I'm just going to fast forward us to uncovering some of the map and with future turns, just to show you what other rooms might look like. So here is the fusion chamber. This is one that we might have flipped over, and then we would come over to this area. Now, this is a perfect example of where you would be testing with your level card, but wouldn't necessarily be in combat. So here we have our card, and we do have a current discard pile. I'll put this on screen for us over here, but you're going to line this up to see what thresholds you want to meet for the different rewards. So now we will attempt to test this room, and here we have a 1, which is great. We're still very safe. And now we have a 4, which is great. That's going to land us at 5, and I think that's a great place for us to stop. So we'll end at the 5, gain the 1 power cell, update our tracker, and then we've gone through this room. So as I said, you can't go back to rooms, and this is a case where you might want to go back to this room because it's important, not important, but very helpful, but you wouldn't be able to go back to there. So these would still go to your discard pile, and if you ever needed to draw more cards and you weren't able to, you would need to be able to spend power cells to shuffle your discard pile and then draw new cards. So any of these tests are going to have this with your threshold, and as you can tell by the power, now that you understand more what that means, in level 1 your threshold is 6, but in level 2 your threshold is 10, and level 3 your threshold is 12. So it's going to get higher and higher, meaning that you're going to be a little bit riskier with how hard you're pushing your luck and what cards you're choosing to draw. So now that you understand a bit more about how to play the game and how you're maneuvering around the different levels, remember that in order to fight the boss, not only do you need to reach them, but you need the security card as well. So I'm going to show you what that looks like, as well as traps, because traps are going to be a great way for players to gain experience points. So here you can see the security office, and this has the key card, which is something that you need to unlock to be able to come up to the boss here. So it's great that we were able to find it, and that is also always going to be placed randomly, meaning that you're going to have to explore rooms to be able to find that security card every time. Now after that we chose to move, and we took a look at this sentry gun here. This is a trap, and we're going to choose not to go to it and move to a different card instead. But this being a trap, this is going to be a way for you to gain experience points. So again, you are going to put your level card right up to that. And you can see that quite a few things are going to happen. So not only are you going to take damage, even if you have the 6 power, you're going to take 1 damage but gain 2 experience points. So that is going to make it a bit worth it. Whereas if you had 5 power, you would take 3 damage and gain 1 experience point. But if you bust, you're actually taking the full damage, which is 9. So your health does start at 16, and it will fluctuate throughout the game. But having a trap bust on you and do a huge amount of damage is going to be very, very detrimental. So again, having these crystals to be able to turn back time and take back something that may have caused you to bust can be very, very important, because overall it can be the difference between 9 damage and maybe 3 damage. So that is a trap that you could encounter, but again, if you use it to peek at that card, and then you can choose to go to something different. So if it's not the second card that you're drawing when moving, you could choose to move on and not go to it, but again, it is worth experience points, so that's a reason to do so. But we'll flip this card over here, and this is going to be the barter droid. Now this is going to be very special, where this is where you're going to be able to make a trade and convert different resources that you have for other things. So you're able to really convert any type of resource that you have, from your crystals to your power cells to your credits, but you're able to gain a card if you like, which is going to be a loot card. And that's going to be really important, where again, you're gaining the loot cards when you defeat different enemies, drawing as many as the skulls that they have, and then choosing to keep one. Again, this guy didn't provide any, but this is going to be a way for you to gain loot cards as well, and you're going to be purchasing them instead with the exchange of your resources. So you're going to be able to draw even more of these and then go through them, and that's going to be a way for you to upgrade your deck, not only to be able to fight the boss, but get through future levels as well. Now, at the end of each level is your boss battle, and as you'd expect, they provide a little bit better loot, but they're also tougher, so they are going to be harder to take out, and I'll show you what that looks like now, because that's going to be the last thing you do before you set up for the next level. So again, you play through the 3 different levels, and then hopefully you make it out alive before these guys take you down to 0 health. Now here you can see our boss, Mech Medusa. I'm going to move her over to here, but again, you would match them up to the particular level, and you can see that her power level is a bit higher than the other enemies. So for her, she wants to reach a 5, meaning that you want to try to either tie a 5 with her and have more cards available, or hit that 6 every round, because upon winning a round of combat, they'll stun you, causing you to discard a card. So you're going to be losing cards, which is going to be pretty hard because it's going to cost you more and more power cells to get through this round of combat. but as I said, it is going to give you better rewards. So she does have the 4 skulls, meaning that you'll be able to draw 4 loot cards to choose one when you beat her, as well as getting 3 credits and 4 experience. So it is going to be worth it to take out these different bosses. They're going to make you stronger and stronger for the future levels, but they're definitely going to provide a bit of challenge for you. Now, I did say that you would lose the game if you hit 0 health, but the other way to lose the game is to get boxed in. So as I said, you can never go back to a card that you were previously on. So if when we were back here, if we were on the sentry gun and we chose to go backwards onto this tile here, we would have locked ourselves out of the game. And unfortunately, sometimes when you're making certain choices, you may choose to forego certain things thinking you know where the security office is, so that can be a little bit tricky that if you ever do lock yourself out of that area, you can kind of lock yourself out of being able to get to the final boss. Now, before we go, I do want to show you a few other loot cards. So this one, for example, you're actually able to rotate it to select the power. So normally, whenever you're drawing cards, you have to flip them over like a book because it does have different power levels on each side. And part of the game is going to be when you're cycling through with your power cells to choose which side those are going to be oriented on. But some of them are going to be special where you're able to rotate to select the power, providing you a little bit of flexibility when they come up. Now, another example is going to be ones that are able to use any played cards effect. So these are going to be ones that are able to copy the cards that are played before it and be able to mimic those different powers, providing flexibility throughout each round. Now, another thing just to show you now that you understand the game a bit more is the different layouts that you're going to be able to play with, because depending on the difficulty as you escalate into the different levels, you are going to have these different layouts that you're going to have, and they're going to provide just a huge amount of change throughout the game that, as I said, knowing that you cannot go backwards and you're trying to go through certain rooms, they can really change why you choose to go to certain areas. Infinity Rogue Space Dungeon relies heavily on this push your luck system, which I think works pretty well with this game, where you do have these different power levels on the cards that you have, and when you spend your power crystals to cycle through, you are able to choose the orientation. So you do have this agency on choosing which way that they're oriented, but you also have your chrono crystals where you're able to take something back if you need to. So you are trying to hit these different power thresholds, whether you're fighting across the different enemies or you're trying to make these different traps, you're trying to hit these different thresholds, and the chrono crystals really come in handy that you want to use those to be able to set back something if you really need to. Now, because of that, the different rooms are going to be really important because the rooms will provide you with the different things that you're able to gain throughout the game. So as you saw, we got power crystals. That was really important, but getting those chrono crystals is also very, very important. So also when you're using your different cards for the push your luck system, depending on what's on top, you're able to gain those different bonuses, and that's really going to matter what cards you choose to orient where. Now, those loot cards that I showed you where you're able to choose the power level upon playing it, I found were very, very strong, but this is also a game that can be a little bit deceiving, that you start off with a lot of health, but you have 3 different levels to go through, and they only increase in difficulty. So they're going to get harder and harder because the different thresholds are going to increase not only for yourself, but for what the enemies are also trying to draw, meaning that they're going to become more and more powerful as well. So I did find that for a solo game, this is one that can be pretty difficult, and sometimes you have to reset and play again, where it can be quite tough, and I think that that does fit within the Microrama series. So as I said, you can check out the link down below for everything that Roguelike has planned for this series. I've been Professor Meg. Thank you all for checking out Infinity Rogue Space Dungeon. Thanks for watching the Board Game Code channel, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!